Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my new video. In today's video, I'm going to be talking a bit more about Marco Rubio. I only touched on him yesterday, but today I'm going to go in more detail about what he talked about and said. Ben Norton explains it perfectly. The US wants EU to help it colonize the global south again. And I'm also going to be talking about Cuba today. And I'm also going to be talking about China's radar that's been sent to Iran and what it all means. And I'm also going to be talking about China's satellite images of US military bases, and they are basically putting it out on the internet, open source. It's quite funny, actually. So I think that's all for today. I'm also going to be talking about Lavrov as well. Lavrov's interview in BRICS TV, and it was quite interesting because he was talking about Trump, and he was comparing Trump to Biden, and he's saying that they're pretty much the same. In fact, Trump is probably worse. So I'm going to be talking about that. So let's start from the beginning. Without further ado, don't forget to like, share, comment. Really helps algorithm, and if you watch the video to the end, that really helps a lot. And also try and watch my other video channels as well. So if you can watch some old videos or duplicates, you don't have to listen to the sound. You can put the sound off and just let it run. Okay, so let's start with Marco Rubio. What did actually Marco Rubio say? Well, this tweet by Ben Norton pretty much explains it. He basically wants America and Europe to start colonizing the world again. Because according to him, the world was a better place when the West was colonizing the world, including the global South. And you had obviously Britain, Spain, France, Denmark, the Dutch, pretty much colonizing, even Portugal, colonizing many parts of the world. And and he wants that to happen again. And why does he want this to happen again? Because the global South is moving towards multipolarity. They're moving towards China, they're moving towards Russia. And the Americans don't have the same control over the global South as they did, let's just say, 20, 30 years ago. 20 years ago, maybe, they had a big hold on the global South. That's gone now. They've pretty much lost control of most of Africa. They've lost control over most of the kind of, I would say, Asian countries. Um, they've lost control over most of maybe Central Asia, and they're losing control in the Middle East, and they're losing control in South America, and they're losing control in Europe. So the Americans are pretty much panicking. So they want to recolonize the world again, and they want the Europeans to help America to recolonize Greenland, Canada, South America, and they're also asking Europe they can do the same as well, as long as as long as it doesn't clash with America's interests. So they want to colonize the rest of the world because when you colonize a country, you basically have control over its natural resources, its government, its laws. You basically have full control over the country. Like when Britain controlled India, for example, it stole trillions and trillions of wealth, gold, and used Indian people as labor. They used them as people in wars, in the front lines. They took free grain from India. They starved millions of people in India while they, stole the grain from India. They basically pillaged the country. And people say that, oh, the British actually built infrastructure in India and stuff like that. No, guys, they didn't. They only built infrastructure to move resources around. So if there was a mine or a gold mine somewhere, they built infrastructure from the mine to the big cities, and obviously from the big cities, they built infrastructure to go to the sea where they can ship it into the ships, and from those ships they can send it to back to England. So they only built infrastructure to benefit England. They didn't build it to benefit the people of India. They didn't say they didn't do something like, oh, the people of India need this bridge in this city, or the people in India need this road. They didn't do that, guys. They only built roads, bridges, and trains only to benefit UK, to obviously steal the resources. So that's what they did. They wanted, um, and they pretty much had control over India as well. So that's what the West wants again. They want full control over the global South because they are losing, guys. They are absolutely losing. You just have to look at the UN. Every time there is a UN vote, the Americans are isolated. They cannot pass any votes in the UN anymore. It's basically the US and its close allies like UK vassal states, Israel, and a few other smaller vassal states that always kind of side with the US in the UN. But there's 195, 96, maybe 97, maybe 90, 198 countries. You lose count because every single year there's a new country. Like this year or last year, there was I think Israel. They recognized Somaliland, which is used to be part of Somalia, and they're obviously separatists. So I don't know if that's an official country or not, but Israel has recognized it, and um, and yeah, so all of these other countries, let's just say 198, for argument's sake, most of them do not vote for America. Most of them do not vote for Israel. They're pretty much isolated, and America doesn't like that. They want total control. They want total control over all of the countries in the world, and if they cannot have total control through the dollar and their dominance and the financial system and the threat of sanctions and tariffs, well, guess what? The other way is military. And if they cannot control the government, they will overthrow the government, put a friendly one. And if the friendly one doesn't work, if the friendly one doesn't do what they say, then the other option is to occupy the country. And this is what they're trying to do with Cuba. This is what they're trying to do with Venezuela. And maybe after that, they will move to other South American countries which don't align with them. I'm talking about maybe Brazil, Mexico, Colombia, maybe Nicaragua. All of these countries, they'll come after them one by one, and they want the Europeans to basically help them. And and did the Americans really believe that the Europeans are going to help them invade, Greenland? Doesn't make any sense. And even if the Europeans helped America colonize parts of the other rest of the world, is the rest of the world going to help Europe, or are they going to feel sorry for Europe when America takes Greenland? No, they're not. It's basically FAFO. If you're going to start messing around with the rest of the world and start pushing for colonization and stuff, when it happens to you, no one's going to feel sorry for you. So Marco Rubio was basically giving out this speech, talking about colonization, how great it was back in the day, and how things need to go back to that level. And Marco Rubio didn't even turn up for the European meeting with about Ukraine. He just didn't show up, even though he was at the Munich, security conference. He just didn't show up to this Ukraine meeting because he didn't think it was important enough. And then he was asking for help from the Europeans. So the Europeans were not having any of it. Um, I think I saw a lot of people, giggling when he was giving the speech and stuff. And Callas, who's a major US puppet, even she was slating the Americans. In that conference, she said something about in the jungle, even animals work together. That's what she said. And she was saying if you want Europeans to help you in wars and colonization, then you need to do the same for us. You need to help us. And that's what she was trying to say. She said Russia fights alone, but when America fights wars, he always asks for help from his allies. So things are changing, guys. So I think that world, there's going to be a huge change in the world because of multipolarity. America will try and take steps, and I think Venezuela was the first step. Cuba is also maybe coming next. Then you got Iran that they're trying to, either regime change or attack. So they're basically looking around the world and trying to take out these sort of truly sovereign countries. They're going to take them out one by one. Hopefully, Russia and China won't allow the United States to do that. Um, the UN is dead, guys. There is no UN anymore. Nothing gets all this stuff that Trump is doing. Nobody even brings it up in the UN. Gaza has shown that UN is pretty much useless. They've pretty much allowed a genocide to take place, and nothing is done about it. All they do is talk and debate. Nothing gets done. If there's a genocide that's happening in a country that America doesn't like, say in Iran, for example, if Iran was genociding its people, you're not going to hear the end of it. You're going to see in every single paper, you're going to see it all over social media. Iran is killing its own people. Even they're saying it now. They're saying there's 100,000, 200,000 people died in the protests. And people are joking in social media. They're saying, oh, this number is going to rise to 6 million because the Israelis love use the number 6 million for various reasons. I'm not going to say why, but you can kind of guess. And and yeah, so if Iran did anything like that, you're not going to hear the end of it. Basically, it's going to go into the UN. They're going to ask for Security Council intervention. We're going to basically get all the countries together, and they're going to basically start bombing Iran. That's what they did with Yugoslavia. That's what they did to Libya, and that's what they did with Iraq. You know, Syria. All of these countries, they just make up fake narratives and start bombing them. But if Israel does it, basically it's okay. They don't mention it. They try and cover it up. They support them. So what Israel did to Gaza was a test, guys. Obviously, they are occupying Gaza. They are, doing ethnic cleansing, and the Americans are watching it, and they're taking a lot of hints and taking a lot of lessons from Israel. And they think, oh, if Israel can do it and get away with it, why can't we? We might as well do the same, go on a bigger scale. And so I think the whole world needs to watch out now, especially the global south. Especially if you're a country that cannot defend yourself, you better watch out. And I think India needs to probably watch out as well, because if colonization is going to start again, if the Western countries are going to start colonizing the world again, they will go for Africa, they will go for India, and they will go for India because Britain colonized India for 200 years, and Indians are pretty much very much how would you say, you know, they're easy to colonize. Let's just say, they basically they love being colonized. It's called the Stockholm syndrome. So the Indians are not probably not going to put up a fight. To be honest, they will probably um, welcome it. They will colonize parts of Africa because it's got lots of natural resources. They will colonize obviously Greenland, parts of South America, and they're basically going to go after countries that have got resources. They'll go after Iran. They'll go after countries in the Middle East. The only countries that can stop this is China and Russia, and probably BRICS. If the BRICS countries come together and come to some sort of security arrangement, then maybe this can be stopped. Because you cannot go for the UN anymore. You have to basically fight these monsters head on. And I think China probably will need to do more um, to basically stop this Western bullying around the world. I think China probably needs a few more years, and I think the Ukraine war needs to end as well, because then Russia and China can work on this full time. They can kind of focus on this. Right now, Russia's very busy, and China's focused on obviously the island of Taiwan. They don't want to start another war anywhere. They, China wants to focus on its economy. They don't want to get involved. I think China's policy is not to get involved in other countries. But I think they might have to, especially with Iran. And there's lots of evidence showing that China is helping Iran. For example, in Global Times, you can see China releasing lots of satellite pictures of US bases, and they're basically putting it up on the internet for open source for anyone to see it. And also, they're selling a lot of weapons to Iran as well, like this one. They're selling the YLC 8B radar to Iran. This is one of the latest radars that China has, and this can basically find the F-35 jets and stealth jets. And a couple of these will basically mean that if any kind of stealth jets go into Iran, they're more easily shot down because you can see them on the radar. And then when you can see them on the radar, that's like 80% of the work. And you just let your missiles do the rest, basically. You just fire loads of barrages of missiles towards it, and eventually one or two will hit. So I think China will help Iran, to be honest. I think if Iran falls, this is not going to be good news for China because Iran does provide a lot of oil to China, provides a lot of gas to China as well. But Iran is also provides, how would you say, Iran protects China from the threats of the Middle East. It protects. If Iran is strong, you know, this is good news for China because it stops the threat of the Middle East going towards China. And when I say threats of the Middle East, and I'm talking about Israel, I'm talking about ISIS, talking about obviously terrorism and stuff like that. If Iran is strong, they can basically provide security for the rest of the area, and they can provide an anti-US, anti-Israel threat, and they can keep that at bay, and that will protect China as well, because China is not far away from Iran. They're only one country away. The only country in the middle of Iran is Afghanistan, and to the north, I think it's Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and stuff. But Afghanistan borders China, and Afghanistan borders Iran. So China is not that far from Iran. So if Iran falls, you will have US bases all over Iran, and they will stop, oil, gas going into China, and they will start sending lots of ISIS members all towards China as well. And it will cause all sorts of trouble for China, basically, all types of trouble. And this is why China cannot allow Iran to fall. And Iran, Russia, and China are very important for the global south. These countries are truly sovereign in the world, and they need to be working together to stop the West from destroying these countries, because once Iran falls or Russia falls, then they're all going to come after China, all of them, all the Western countries. And so it's very, very important that Iran, is basically protected. And I think China will do that. China will give Iran lots of advanced weapons that it needs. And why not? Because America is selling weapons to Taiwan, right? You have Trump right now. I think he's almost getting ready to approve another 20 billion worth of weapons to the island of Taiwan. So if Trump can do that, why can't China provide weapons to Iran, who is their ally? Plus, China's got 400 billion worth of investments in Iran. These investments are in oil and gas sectors, infrastructure. So they've got a lot, there's a lot of money riding in Iran, Chinese investments. Americans have already destroyed the Chinese investments in Venezuela, for example, and now they want to do that with Iran. But it's not going to be easy for them. And I think if China provides Iran as many weapons as possible, it's going to cause a lot of pain for Americans, or too much pain for them to have a war with Iran. I think it'll probably scare them off. But even if they have a war with Iran, they will have so many losses that they cannot carry on. They will have to stop. And also, this is a really good way for China to test its weapons as well. If they give all these weapons to Iran, it's a good time to test the weapons and improve on it. For example, Russia has been fighting Ukraine now for for years now. Russia's military has actually improved a lot. For example, their drone systems have improved, thousand percent. Their latest drones, which is, in the beginning of the war, I think Russia kind of struggled with modern warfare. But as time went along, their drone technology improved. They bought a lot of drones from Iran, which was the first generation. And after that, Russia improved on those drones, and they flew faster, they flew longer, they had bigger payloads, and they improved them electronically, and they're a lot more harder to shoot down. So their drone warfare experience, and plus, the actual technical part of the military has improved a lot. And Russia has learned to, overcome HIMARS, because every time the West used to provide Russia, Ukraine with weapons, they used to say, "Oh, we're providing them HIMARS. They're a game changer. We're providing them with tomahawks. We're providing them with javelins. These are game changers." And Russia has found a way to overcome them. Russia has found a way to jam them or shoot them down. So Russia has improved its military just by fighting Ukraine. All of its military has been improved. All the Russian military guys have learned, how to fight in a modern war. And Russia's going to come out of this, great. They're going to come out with this with great experience, brand new weapon systems, fully tested and improved. Because history has shown that, countries that fight wars and win, they come out much stronger. Because if you remember when the Soviets beat the NAZIs, the Soviets became the superpower of the world, alongside the Americans. And when China beat the Americans in the Korean War, because I don't care what people say, China did beat America in the Korean War. The Americans actually surrendered. They basically surrendered, and they forced this line between South Korea and North Korea. America would not do that if they won, right? They only did that because they lost. And America also lost in the Vietnam War. China also helped, the Vietnamese fight the Americans. So China has learned from these wars and experiences, and they've became better for it. And and Iran would be a good way for China to give it weapons and test it. I mean, recently Pakistan used Chinese weapons and they were tested on the battlefield and they won. They shot down 5 or 6 Indian airplanes, and India got so scared then they begged for a ceasefire. They went to Trump to beg him for a ceasefire, and they didn't want to carry on with the war anymore because they knew if that carried on, they would have lost their whole air force. Plus, Pakistan has got nuclear weapons and things like that, and it was a sign of weakness for Trump, and this is why Trump's relationship with India changed. The whole reason of India becoming in Quad, because India was supposed to be a powerful country to take on China. And as soon as Trump knew that India is weak, can't even beat Pakistan, and Trump dumped them after that. If you notice, he dumped them very severely. Trump only responds to strength. He only likes countries that are strong, respects countries that are strong, like China. He respects them because China stands up to his bullying, stands up to his tariff threats and things like that. So Trump responds to strength, and India showed a lot of weakness during their war with Pakistan, and this is why Trump pretty much dumped them after that. So Pakistan was a good test for Chinese weapons, and I think Iran will be a good test for Chinese weapons as well. If a couple of these radars and Chinese anti-aircraft missiles take down a couple of F-35s, can you imagine what that would mean? That would mean so many global south countries are going to start putting orders for Chinese weapons. They're going to start putting orders for these radars. They're going to start putting orders for anti-aircraft missiles. They're going to start putting orders for Chinese jets. Chinese weapons are going to be sold everywhere around the world. And Americans, they have a big monopoly of weapon sales all across the world. And they've had that monopoly for a long time. And if Iran uses Chinese weapons to take down American weapons, you can kiss goodbye to American military sales. Global South countries will just buy, Chinese weapons. Obviously, Russians as well. But you will see them phase out American weapons because they know it's very expensive and it's pretty much useless in a battlefield. Ukraine has showed the American weapons are not very good, and even Israel has showed the American, Patriots and THAAD missiles are not very good. They didn't stop Iranian missiles. So yeah, I think China should help Iran. They can provide them with not with boots on the ground, but they can provide them weapons. They can provide them with intelligence. And I believe there's some Chinese ships near Iranian coast, and it's it's a radar ship. It's checking for American submarines, and it's doing intelligence. And I think China is sending a couple of more battleships, the Type 55s, to support that ship. Russia is also sending a ship to support that ship as well. And they're going to be doing some live test exercises off the Iranian coast. So that sends out a message to the Americans that attacking Iran is not an option. It's not something they can get away with. So this is why Trump has pulled back. Trump was ready to attack Iran a few weeks ago, but I think because of China, because of Russia, and also because Iranians shut down Starlink, Trump got scared. He thinks, oh, bloody hell, Iran has basically they told they told him that Iran is a third world country. It's been hit by sanctions. It's got no technology, and then they managed to shut down Starlink. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine the shock in Trump's face? So after they shut down Starlink and they captured lots of these Mossad spies all over Iran, because everyone that had a Starlink system lit up like a Christmas tree, and they all got arrested. and those protests just disappeared after after they got the Starlink systems. So Trump obviously got scared. He thinks, oh God, Iran has got these weapons. He can shut down Starlink. He's probably Russians and Chinese are helping Iran shutting down Starlink. So if we attack Iran, they might have something secret planned for us. So that's why Trump is getting second thoughts. He's sending a second aircraft carrier towards Iran, but I don't think two aircraft carriers is going to be enough. I think two aircraft carriers means there's more targets for Iran to basically shoot down with hypersonic missiles. Aircraft carriers nowadays are nothing. You can just send out maybe you can send out maybe a dozen, 12 hypersonic missiles towards an aircraft carrier. And if the aircraft carrier managed to shoot down one or maybe two, and the rest of them, you know, let's just say half of them hit the sea, but the other half hit the aircraft carrier, the aircraft carrier is gone. And in terms of money, you know, the aircraft carrier with all the planes, all the equipment, all the people, we're talking trillions, guys. Trillions will be gone down the drain. And how much do these hypersonic missiles cost Iran? Maybe $50,000, $100,000 each. So you can just work out the maths. The hypersonic missiles will always win. You send out 12, you're guaranteed, at least five or six of them to hit the aircraft carrier. Even if one of them hits or two of them hits, that's more than enough. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of discuss that. Is there anything else I wanted to see? Yeah, there's one story about Lavrov actually, and he came on the BRICS TV interview, and he didn't say any nice words about Trump. He says Trump is basically playing Bidenomics. Trump is basically Biden 2.0 because Trump has not removed any sanctions on Russia like he promised. And there's no trust for Trump anymore because the last time Trump had a meeting with Putin, it was a meeting over the phone. And I don't know if you guys remember, but basically Trump called Putin and he asked him to wait. He asked him to wait in his residence where he was calling from. And he said, I'm going to call Zelensky, give him an update, and I'm going to call you back. So if you wait there, I'll call you back in a few hours. And then after 1 hour, you had about 100 or so drones attacking Putin's residence. So they knew exactly where he was because of the phone. They must have hacked it or something, or they must have figured out his location somehow. And they tried to attack and kill Putin. And Trump was a big part of that. And there's also stories about when Trump went to see the North Korean leader in his first term, that he hired the CIA to basically assassinate the North Korean leader. But the CIA failed. They absolutely failed miserably. So you cannot trust Trump, and he's done it a few times. He's killed Soleimani from Iran, and basically Soleimani was actually helping Trump at the time. He was basically going into Iraq to talk to the insurgency to stop them from attacking American, bases and things like that. So he sent some envoys to Iraq, and he also kind of asked Soleimani to be part of the kind of envoys to negotiate with Iraq and stuff like that. So he knew exactly where he was, and they killed him basically. And this is not the first time. During Iran's negotiations, probably a few months ago with Israel, again, you know, they knew exactly where they were, and Trump gave away the details in Qatar, and they started bombing. Israelis started bombing Qatar, and they killed a couple of people. But the fact is, they bombed Qatar, which is a U.S. ally. And they did the same with Palestinians as well when Hamas tried to negotiate. Every time there's a negotiation, Israel or Trump got to know their locations and killed them. So this is not something new from Trump. This he's been doing this for a long time. So this is why I don't think the Russians will trust Trump again, especially when it comes to negotiations. And this is why you see the Ukraine war carrying on. Nobody's actually doing anything concrete to stop it anymore. And yeah, I think Lavrov is saying that Trump cannot be trusted. He's worse than Biden. At least with Biden, you knew what you were getting. But with Trump, he's like a snake. He'll try to pretend to be your friend. He will he will pretend you be your friend. He will get you to put your guard down, and then he will basically try and kill you. That's what Trump will do. I'm not here supporting Biden either. Biden was just as bad, to be honest. They're all bad, to be honest. I don't think there's been any good United States presidents since Kennedy. I think they've all been absolutely crazy, all of them. And yeah, that's all I wanted to say, guys. I think the video's too long. I'm not going to go through Idiot of the Day section today, but I'll try and do that tomorrow. Anyway, take care for now. See you soon. Bye bye.